Karen called cops on my ranch, but I own 100 acres in this county. She stood in the middle of my front gate like she was delivering a royal decree, waving her clipboard, shouting about noise, dust pollution, and community impact. Then she did it. She pulled out her phone and called 911. He's operating heavy equipment, she barked into the speaker, glaring at my tractor across the pasture. He's not authorized. I'm filing a community code violation. This land's under review. I stepped off my porch, boots crunching on gravel, and walked up slowly. Not mad, just steady. Then I said 5 words that shut her down, ma'am. I own this county, and I wasn't exaggerating, because I don't just live here. I manage power, water rights, grazing permits, and backroad contracts across 100 acres and half a dozen town ordinances. What she didn't know, she'd just called the cops on the man who signs their field access requests. I didn't always own land. I earned every acre 10 at a time. Through grit, good timing, and the kind of sweat that soaks through denim by noon. 20 years ago, I was fixing fence lines for other men. Now, I lease grazing rights to the county, manage 3 active wells, and supply hay to half the volunteer fire stations in the region. This ranch isn't just mine. It's my work, my home, and in a way, my jurisdiction. But folks like Karen don't ask questions before they swing. She moved in 2 months ago. Out-of-state plates, pearl white SUV, high-end boots that had never met mud, built herself a picket fence on a parcel just beyond the ridge about 3 acres that butted up to one of my cattle trails. I figured she'd stay quiet, maybe grow lavender or get into essential oils. But 3 days after she unpacked, she marched onto my gravel road and told me I was damaging shared access. I raised an eyebrow. There's no shared access. She pointed to a laminated sheet, something that said Pine Valley Ridge, HOA access rights and noise standards. That's when the first red flag waved. There's no HOA here, I said plainly. This is unincorporated land. She smiled like I was a toddler holding a crayon upside down. We're reorganizing. I ignored her at first, figured she was just playing pretend with paperwork and too much free time. But then the notices started showing up, taped to my mailbox, folded under windshield wipers, delivered in blue folders with gold foil seals that looked like they'd been printed at a mall kiosk. Ranch equipment operation outside permitted hours, $75 fine dust drift, affecting adjacent properties, $60 fine unlicensed agricultural water discharge, $200 fine. Every one of them ended with the same line. Failure to comply may result in legal action under the authority of the HOA board. There was no board. There was just Karen. My ranch hand Travis, a high school kid with more sense than most grown men, asked me one afternoon, "Boss, are we actually in trouble?" I smiled. Only if she owns the sky. I started collecting her notices, didn't rip them down, didn't respond. I just filed them, one by one, because where I come from, you don't swing first. But when you do swing, you swing with both hands. Then came the day she stepped onto my property. It was early, a foggy Wednesday. I'd fired up the post pounder at sunrise. We were fencing off a southern patch to rotate grazing, standard seasonal work. That's when I saw her SUV bouncing down my ranch road unauthorized. Uninvited. She parked at the gate, got out, and started filming. "Sir," she yelled across the dust, "you are in direct violation of our environmental tranquility clause." I kept working. "Sir, I'm filing an official complaint. You are threatening neighborhood peace." Travis looked over. "Want me to shut it down?" I said. "No, let it run." Then she made her biggest mistake. She stepped through my gate, didn't wait to be buzzed in, didn't call, just walked in with her phone up like it was a badge. "You're on HOA monitored land," she announced. "I've submitted this footage to the compliance board." That's when I walked up to her and said it, "Ma'am, I own this county." 20 minutes later, a sheriff cruiser rolled in. Karen flagged him down like she was waving for dessert refills at brunch. "This man is operating heavy equipment without compliance approval," she said. "He's aggressive, and he refused to follow HOA regulations." The deputy stepped out slowly, hand on his belt. "You Caleb Ryan?" I nodded. "That's me." He smirked. "Yeah, figured. I've been driving your hay out to Station 5 for 6 years." Then he turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you're trespassing." Her face turned the color of raw steak. "You don't understand," she stammered. "He's in violation. He's affecting my airspace and audio zone." The deputy raised an eyebrow. "You're what?" That's when I pulled out my own folder. County permits, utility maps, water rights docs, and a certified land title showing Caleb Ryan owner 100 acres. The deputy didn't even have to read it. He knew. Karen stared at the paperwork like it was written in a dead language. "Would you like to step back to your property now?" he asked. She huffed, but walked off. But the damage was done. Not to me. To her. Because by the time the dust settled that day, half the county knew she'd tried to cite a man who held more jurisdiction than she ever would. But I wasn't done. Because a trespass is one thing. But what I found next that made it personal, the gate trespass would have been enough. But when Karen started targeting my neighbors, that's when I stopped filing notices and started building a case. It started with the Walkers. They've lived a mile south of me for 40 years. Good folks. Humble. Their property is dusty. Sure, but that's ranch life. You don't power wash history. Karen hit them with 4 violations in 2 weeks. Unapproved water tanks. Excessive poultry odor. Fence disrepair visible from road. And my favorite, incompatible rural aesthetics. Each came with a fine and a deadline. When I asked to see the paperwork, Mrs. Walker handed me a letter with a gold foil seal that read, "Pine Valley Ridge Compliance Authority, preserving legacy through regulation." It looked fancy, but it was printed on 24LB inkjet paper, crooked and smudged. I made copies. Then I started knocking on doors. In the span of 72 hours, I found 9 more families who'd received similar letters, all from the same compliance board, all demanding fines for absurd reasons: dust on vehicles, livestock visible from the main road, goats braying outside approved hours, every fine payable by Venmo, to an account called Pine Valley Civic Board. A quick search of the username confirmed what I already suspected. The account belonged to Karen A. Reeds. She wasn't just pretending. She was profiting. And it was worse than I thought. I sat down with Sheriff Delgado again. We knew each other from back when I helped map emergency access trails for wildfire season. He's the type who never writes fast, but he listens real close. I handed him the file. "Karen's running a shadow HOA. I said, "She's extorted over $15,000 from residents who think they're breaking real laws." He flipped through the folder, whistling low. "You build this yourself, every page." He looked up. "Want to take it public?" "Not yet. I want one more shot at her. I want to see how far she'll go." So I set a trap. I posted in the Pinefield community group, the real one, that I'd be hosting a hay auction for local 4-H kids. Public. Loud. Big tractor presence. I gave Karen every reason to show up. Sure enough, 2 hours before the event, she sent one of her compliance officers to hand-deliver a cease and desist notice. It read, "You are hereby ordered to cancel all agricultural activity that exceeds standard decibel thresholds under HOA Ordinance PP7. Signed at the bottom, K.A. Reeds, Director of Aesthetic Enforcement." That title didn't exist. Neither did PV7. But I smiled, took the notice, shook the kid's hand, and called Sheriff Delgado. He came with 2 deputies and a clipboard of his own real citations prepared under county statute. Fraud, harassment, operating a fictitious entity, unlawful solicitation of funds. By the time Karen showed up at the hayfield in her freshly pressed compliance vest, ready to lecture about community standards, she walked straight into an ambush. Delgado let her talk, let her pull out her folder, let her read from her HOA charter. Then he said, in front of the entire crowd, "Ma'am, this isn't just invalid, it's illegal. You've been impersonating a regulatory body, collecting funds under false pretense, and harassing landowners on sovereign property." Karen blinked. "You're making a mistake." He stepped forward. "No, ma'am, you did." They walked her out with cuffs on. No fight, no screaming, just stunned silence from the crowd. And when the cruiser doors closed, people clapped. Quiet at first, then louder. Farmers, kids, grandparents. Even the goats brayed like they knew. But I wasn't done, because justice isn't just about one arrest. It's about making damn sure it doesn't happen again. Karen's arrest didn't just make waves, it triggered a county-wide awakening. The sheriff's cruiser hadn't even left the hayfield before cell phones lit up. Screenshots of her fake cease and desist notice hit every local Facebook group. Someone filmed the whole confrontation and uploaded it to YouTube with the title HOA Karen Gets Arrested by Sheriff at Rancher's Hay Auction by Morning. It had over 180,000 views. But virality wasn't what mattered. Accountability was. The next day, I sat in Sheriff Delgado's office with a fresh binder. "Thought you'd be done by now," he said, eyeing the pages. "Just getting started." Inside was every known violation Karen had issued, cross-referenced with public land records and financial logs. She'd collected over $27,000 in fraudulent fines, most of it from families on fixed incomes, folks who didn't know they could say no. Delgado leaned back in his chair, eyes hard. "We're going to need the DA." Meanwhile, the town council called an emergency session. They asked me to speak. I stood before a packed chamber, neighbors, ranchers, reporters, even state assembly staff, and told them the truth. Karen didn't create something new. She exploited a vacuum. She built fear where trust should have been. And she didn't do it alone. Because as it turned out, she wasn't. Two of her compliance officers had ties to a local real estate firm. Their job: target properties with elderly or out-of-town owners, issue violations, and convince them to sell at below market prices, then flip them. They'd done it 5 times in the past year. We submitted sworn affidavits from affected families. One woman cried as she spoke. "They told me I had 30 days to fix my shutters or I'd be taken to court. I didn't know it was all fake." The council voted 7-0 to open a civil investigation. The state attorney general's office followed within 48 hours. And while the legal gears turned, something else changed. The people got louder. Mr. Walker spray-painted fraud zone on the old compliance office sign Karen had stuck on her garage. The Chens reopened their ranch stand and passed out free corn with every purchase wrapped in photocopies of Karen's fake violations. Elise, the single mom, started a support group called Fence Line Freedom, a place where folks could share their HOA horror stories and learn how to fight back. We printed flyers: "No HOA, no fees, know your rights," and we stapled them to every post from here to the county line. I was asked to speak at the county ag conference, not as a victim, as a warning. We don't just need stronger laws. I said, we need stronger neighbors. Karen eventually took a plea deal. She was convicted on 2 misdemeanors: fraudulent misrepresentation and illegal collection of funds. She paid restitution to 32 families, was banned from any real estate or homeowner-related roles for 10 years, and her compliance council dismantled, scrubbed offline, dissolved by court order. The next spring, we had a barbecue out at my ranch. Same hayfield, same fence, new sign, painted by the 4-H kids. It read, "This land belongs to those who work it." Karen never came back, but her legacy did. Because what started as one woman's fraud became a community's reckoning, and we were just getting warmed up. When the dust finally settled, it wasn't just a fake HOA that got buried. It was the idea that you can walk into a community, any community, and bully people into silence with paperwork and posture. Karen thought she could. For a while, she did. But out here, we've got deeper roots than she expected. Her house sold 3 months after the plea, quietly, no listing, no open house. A veteran bought it, former Navy mechanic with 3 kids and a service dog named Tank. His first act as owner, taking down the last compliance zone sign and burning it in a pit out back. People brought marshmallows. Meanwhile, things around Pine Valley changed. The old compliance notices were replaced by something new: actual information. Not rules, resources. Every ranch got a copy of real zoning boundaries, legal building codes, emergency contact numbers, a simple 1-pager. No HOA, sure, no fine, No clipboard, sure, no power. We laminated them, tacked them up on community boards, fence posts, even the diner's front door. Sheriff Delgado asked me to speak at the county town hall, said folks needed to hear from someone who'd stared down fake authority and didn't blink. I told them what I'd tell anyone reading this now. The moment someone tells you they're in charge without being elected, licensed, or sworn asked to see the paperwork, because out here rights aren't printed on pastel flyers. They're earned, held, and defended. And if you don't speak up, you give that power away. Then I read something aloud. The last page of Karen's HOA handbook. She wrote, "Some people just don't understand what it means to preserve order." I looked up at the crowd. Karen was right about one thing. I said, order matters, but it's not built on fear, it's built on respect. And out here, respect rides a long trail. We didn't just repair fences, we rebuilt trust. The Walkers opened their barn for 4-H workshops. The Chens helped install solar panels for anyone over 60. Elise got elected to the town planning committee. And I kept doing what I've always done. Waking up early, checking water levels, feeding the land that feeds us. But now, every time I hear a tractor roar or a rooster crow, I smile a little bigger, because it means the land's alive, and no clipboard's ever going to shut it down again. Call to action. Have you or someone you know been pressured by a fake HOA, been handed a phony fine, shamed into compliance that wasn't backed by law? Speak up. You don't need a title to defend what's yours. You don't need permission to ask questions. And you sure as hell don't owe money to anyone who prints their power at home. Stand your ground. Know your land. And remember, real community doesn't need enforcement. It needs neighbors.